bottom of the document, there is a separate tab for each subcommittee labeled group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that's just a brief overview of that document. Are there any questions I could help answer at this time before we continue on? Denise, I see your hand up. You're muted. Denise, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you, Megan. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I don't seem to have that document immediately available. Was it in the original materials that we received?
No, it came in an email last night from Reggie, and I can send it. I can have Reggie send it over to you right now. Again.
All right. Thank you. I have last night's email from Reggie. I can double check that also.
It is an attachment to that email.
Okay. Thank you, Meg.
Yeah. Other questions?
So thank you, Megan. We can do questions and have good conversation throughout our time here. So if there's something that comes up, just make sure that you let us know, because it is fast paced and it can be a little overwhelming and confusing at times. We are going to start with subcommittee 1, and I'd like for subcommittee 1 members to introduce themselves very quickly, and then we'll turn it over to Mo Terry, who's got our first bill of 14 bills that we'll present today, to take it away. But first, if the subcommittee 1 members could introduce themselves, that'd be great.
So first, I'm Mo Terry. I represent District 26, the western part of Gorham, and I serve on the Taxation Committee and State and Local Government.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sarah Pepworth. I represent House District 133. I'm currently serving on the State and Local Government Committee.
I'm Jay McCreight. I represent Harpswell, West Bass, and part of Brunswick in the House, and I serve as Chair of Marine Resources and a member of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you this morning. I'm State Representative Drew Gattine. I represent part of the city of Westbrook, and I currently serve as House Chair of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee.
Hi, I'm Senator Shenna Bellows. I serve on Subcommittee 1, the Judiciary Committee, and I chair the Labor and Housing Committee.
Good morning. I'm Dick Farnsworth, and I'm on House District 37, and I'm on the Education Committee.
Great. No other Subcommittee 1 members, I see. So we will begin this process. And Megan or Katie, Reggie, do you want to time us so that we're able to get through each subcommittee's report in the time we've allotted today? I'm not sure how it breaks down, but it's 11:48 now, and I want to make sure that every subcommittee can present. So.
Sure thing. I'll start a 20-minute timer right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Mo, you want to take it away with our first bill?
Sure, absolutely. This is LD 759, the title of which, an act to increase efficiency in enforcement of the Maine Human Rights Act. This is Rachel's bill, so she can probably speak more to it, but essentially it is approving some financial stuff for paralegal positions, computers with the Maine Human Rights Commission, in order to make sure that people are able to use the Human Rights Commission as it is intended. I'm not sure. We talked about this and decided that this was definitely in our something that we can do in our wheelhouse. So I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this, but if you want, I can go through the list, the worksheet, and we can maybe all discuss if this is something that we can all handle. Is that how you want to do this, Rachel?
No, I think what I'd like to do is just go through each bill explaining how we arrived at keeping it. And then folks individually will be able to score on their priority setting sheets, whether or not they want to agree with us. I don't think we'll have time to go through every bill in every single category. So if we give a general description of the bill and why we arrived here, I think that will be sufficient.
Okay.
If everyone agrees.
Works for me for sure. So as to how we arrived at it, I'm gonna let the committee jump in as we will, because I believe this is one of the ones that I was not there for the very beginning of, but it seems like a no-brainer to me. It's a very simple allocation of funds for these two positions. And obviously the Maine Human Rights Commission is very important as far as making sure that that people have the resources that they need in order to be able to present their case if they feel like they are being marginalized for any reason.
Yeah, so if everyone is familiar with the Maine Human Rights Commission, all this does is strengthen the commission's ability to do its work. And it is a funding bill, but the Maine Human Rights Commission has not had increases in its budget for several years, over a couple of decades. So this just strengthens the efficiency of the Maine Human Rights Commission. We can continue. Mo, you all set?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
Okay. If there are any questions, just folks jump right in and ask as we continue to present. I think our next bill is Sarah.
I don't have that on my list. Are you looking at 795?
Yes.
To establish food?
Oh, so sorry. I only have one computer here. It's driving me crazy. You all have the list of who's next?
I have Jay on the list.
Jay, thanks. My apologies.
Yeah, thank you. This is Representative Hickman's bill. It's one he's been working on for quite a while. It establishes a right to food, and it would be a constitutional amendment. It gives flexibility in that we don't have right now in growing, exchanging seeds, harvesting, producing food, and puts in place that it doesn't mean you can trespass or violate laws or property rights, can't poach. The only cost would be the cost that is standard for a referendum on the ballot of $172,000. Representative Hickman has worked on this one for quite a while and worked hard to address any concerns about it. I think the reason we liked it or supported it was just increasing access to food, more options, more choice, more self-sufficiency.
Any questions for anyone on food on this bill? Yeah, Denise?
Thank you, Rachel. My question is, I'm just trying to figure out how to score these as I look at my sheets. So my question really, it may be more for Megan than for the subcommittee. In terms of the 1 through 5s on the questions of ease, how could somebody give me an example of how they might score something like this on ease? Because I'm just not even sure how to begin.
Well, this one would require a constitutional amendment, which means it would go to referendum.
Mhm.
So it would be up to the voters.
So if it's not, if it's not easy to do and it requires human resources and financial resources, are we scoring it 5 or 1?
5 is the easiest. So I would say because it's a constitutional amendment, which would require some effort and time and commitment and potentially funds to run a campaign, you might consider it to score lower on the range since it would be more difficult or require more resources.
Thank you, Megan. That helps.
No problem.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure if Representative Hickman is in this meeting, but if he is, maybe you want to give some voice to it. No, I don't see him. Okay, yeah. So we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. Any questions on 795? Yeah, we're going to have to pick up the pace. So 1051 is our next bill.
Yep, that's me again. An act to create the Maine Family First Employer Program. This is essentially an award that DEC and the governor's office can give to businesses that would recognize them and designate them as family first friendly employers. It would be something that employers can use as a recruiting tool. What we liked most about this is that it specifically targets that all employees, including women, persons of color, and persons with disabilities have equal opportunities. That was sort of the clincher for us in our discussions, that this is a good program. I think, to what Denise was just saying, something that we can probably most very easily pass. It has all of the feel-good stuff and attracts new families to come to Maine. So it's got all the good feels.
Thank you, Mo. Any
Yeah.
questions for Mo? 1051. Thank you. We're going to move to 1142, LD 1142, and that will be presented by Senator Bellows.
Hi, thank you. This is a bill introduced by Representative Chloe Maximum, a resolve to expand transportation services for seniors who are Maine Care members, and it's specific to non-medical transportation needs of our seniors. Our committee examined 2 pieces of data, and that is the need for public transportation, especially within communities of color, and also the importance of access to services for seniors of color. And so we thought it was an important bill. There's significant stakeholder support and infrastructure in place to petition the federal government for a waiver to allow these services to be provided in Maine.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions on LD 1142? Turn to Representative Gatine to talk about LD 1376.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bill that was introduced by Representative Farnsworth, went through the Education Committee. It requires the Maine DOE to work with local school districts to collect data for the purpose of making informed policy decisions around the use of physical restraints within our school systems. It is specifically in the amended version of the bill that was voted out of committee, calls upon that data to include the race of people who are being restrained within schools. So when we evaluated this bill, we thought that it squarely addressed an important issue related to systemic racism within our education system. It got a 12-to-1 vote out of the Education Committee, so it had a very strong vote. It has what I would call a relatively modest fiscal note. So we felt very strongly that this bill should make it onto our list. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Representative.
Drew. That was a reasonably good explanation of what we've tried to do, right?
Happy to help you out there, Dick.
Any questions for Representative Gatine and the sponsor? Representative Farnsworth is in this meeting. Okay, seeing none, will Jay, if you will, Representative McCray, if you could walk us through LD 1417.
Sure, thank you. I don't know if it was cheating, but this is my bill to increase access to Head Start for opioid affected and low, high-risk families. And at least one member of the call testified for the bill. Thank you, Joby. It was, I don't think we need to justify the value of Head Start. The bill does not have explicit language around populations of color, and certainly there's data we can get to support that. It does have a very hefty fiscal note. It would raise the federal poverty level eligibility to 185% and would increase access to about 1,000 kids and families, because Head Start is a family as well as a kid program. Got a good report out of the committee and is on the appropriations table.
Thank you, Representative McCray. We've got about 10 minutes left, Subcommittee 1, just to do a time check. I'm going to ask Senator Bellows if she will lead us through LD 1492 very quickly.
LD 1492 is a sentencing reform bill looking at drug sentencing with substantial testimony and support about the racial disparities in over-incarceration. And in terms of impact, in terms of structural impact, our subcommittee thought that would be extraordinarily high. It's a sentencing reform bill without, at this point, requirements for fiscal expenditure by the state. In fact, it might be savings in terms of lowering costs of incarceration.
Thank you, Senator. I believe, Senator, you have the next bill as well, LD 1572.
LD 1572 is an act to enact the Maine Fair Chance Housing Act. And this is started out as a ban the box bill in terms of not, in terms of people who are formerly incarcerated or not using not denying housing based solely on the evidence of a history of criminal convictions. It's been substantially revised, but again, in terms of disproportionate incarceration of people of color, and then disproportionate difficulty in accessing affordable and quality housing, this has potential for substantial structural impact and would not cost the state money.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no questions, we will go to LD 1689, and I'll turn this over to Representative Gatine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Senator Linda Sanborn's bill. Received a unanimous report out of the Health and Human Services Committee. I believe it's currently on the appropriations table. The amended version of the bill is pretty straightforward. It provides funding for needle exchange programs. Again, given the status of the state and the poor performance in combating the opioid crisis and the disproportionate impact that crisis has had on marginalized communities, we thought this was an important bill to have on our list.
Thank you, Representative. We'll turn to LD 1955, and we'll ask Representative Sarah Pemworth to present that bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 1955 is an act to promote cost effectiveness in the Maine Care Program and improve the oral health of Maine adults. It's Drew Gatine's bill, so if we have questions, we have Representative Gatine to help us with that. It's currently on the AFA table. The fiscal note is high, $10 to $12 million from the federal expenditures fund, $3 to $4 million from the general fund. What this would do, though, is bring in 54,000 Maine Care eligible adults. And when we talk about dental care, we've identified it absolutely as a key issue, as a concern for folks. This would add comprehensive and preventative, as well as diagnostic restorative dental services. So it's a significant expansion. It ends up with cost reduction because dental concerns don't end up people in the emergency room. We're able to deal with those sooner. This bill also includes some educational component and a 5-year report back on costs and savings.
Thank you, Representative Penworth. I believe you have the next LD, which is 1965.
I do as well. This bill is an act to set a minimum wage for support staff, school support staff. And so we're talking here about people who are not administrators or certified teachers. They would be secretaries, ed techs of all levels, custodians. This is Ben Collins' bill. There's some controversy. The bill itself is looking to raise the pay wage to $16 an hour. And some districts, some school districts are already employing people at that level. Others are not. We as a committee thought that it was important both to have strong staff in school systems and also to give opportunities to people. These are many entry-level positions. So the concern is some school districts are already paying this, but for others it would require a significant increase.
Thank you, Representative Penworth. We will now turn to LD 2086. And before I ask Representative Terry to present that, I'll just remind participants to stay on mute until you'd like to speak. It helps with the acoustics. So Representative Terry, LD 2086.
Okay, so it is a resolve to create a criminal records review committee. It has been, the bill itself has been around since the beginning of the 129th. It is, I think we all decided was a no-brainer for us, that it would be something that we would like to see in this report, or reported out, that is. The group itself that the committee points to has already informally been meeting and creating some good work. So I think that we decided that if we can pass this, we can help support them in that work. And then again, it's sort of a no-brainer. It will certainly accomplish the goals that we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you very much, Representative Terry. We have 3 minutes left. We've got 2 bills, so I think we're on track. Representative Gattin, it's your turn again with LD 2109.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a bill to implement the good work that the commission met last summer to look at issues with our direct care workforce came up with. I'll note that this bill is still in the Health and Human Services Committee. There were 343 people or entities that submitted testimony during the public hearing. This has a lot of recommendations, but given the connection between the demographics of the workforce out there who are serving some of our most vulnerable populations in terms of the elderly, people with intellectual disabilities, community mental health, knowing that in fact that these are the people who have been deemed to be essential workers throughout this crisis, and the disproportionate impact that workforce has seen during the COVID crisis. We felt that it was very, very important to echo our support for making sure that we improve the situation for people within that workforce, knowing that again, it's a workforce that is really consists of a lot of people of color and the communities that we're trying to support through this effort. There's a lot of work still to be done with this, but we still think it's a very, very important bill for us.
Thank you, Representative Gattin. Thank you. Our last bill would be done by Representative Penworth, and that is LD 2118.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In the essence of time, I will just read the first sentence of the summary of this bill. This bill reflects the recommendations of the Passamaquoddy tribe, the Penobscot Nation, and the Holton Band of Maliseet Indians to establish a formal government-to-government consultation process between the tribes and the state. It goes on to flesh that concept out. Our committee thought this was a high priority.
Thank you, Representative. That concludes the bills that Subcommittee 1 is seeking your feedback on. We ranked these bills as high priority. There are another 5 bills that we put on a parking lot that we will discuss with the Permanent Commission later on in this process. They are 4 of them are bond bills. So we will not go into any detail about those 5 that are on our parking lot list. I think we're on time. If there aren't any questions for Subcommittee 1, I would like to turn this over to the co-chairs for Subcommittee 2, which would be Permanent Commission members Keith Bisson and Bruce King, and ask that you start with an introduction with your subcommittee members and then go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could, obviously Bruce and I are the co-chairs. Could our Subcommittee 2 members identify themselves? I'm not sure all of you who are on the phone.
This is Representative Kristen Zudier. I represent part of Lewiston, and I serve on the Taxation Committee.
Anyone else? I think Representative Farnsworth was on our committee.
Yeah, I'm here, and I apologize for having horned in on the first one, but anyhow, I'm here, and I already introduced myself.
Anyone else? I know Senator Deschambault was going to be on.
Hello. Hi, I'm Susan DeChambeau. I'm state senator from District 32, which is Biddeford and surrounding towns. I'm the Senate Chair of Criminal Justice Public Safety and also a member of state and local government. Thank you.
I'm not sure I'm hearing anyone else, Bruce. So I'm just going to introduce this. And Madam Chair, if you don't mind, if Subcommittee 1 has definitely set a high bar there with their knowledge of each bill and the legislative status of them. But we were going to take even a subset of the bills that are in that list in the spreadsheet. Is that okay? That ended up based on conversations with, after our initial review where we got down to about 33 bills, and then our subcommittee met, as many of us as could meet last week, and then submitted the further review using the assessment form. And so I'm going to go through those, and then because of various people's time commitments and committee hearings and stuff, we didn't get all of the bills evaluated in our list of 33. So Bruce and I are going to go through this list. I think we have about 11 or 12, Bruce, that, out of that discussion last week and some email back and forth over the past week sort of rose up. But I do want to give our committee members any chance to raise up any bills that aren't on this list that we're about to go through. So if you can bear with us here. But the first bill was LD 611, which is an act to provide supplemental appropriations allocations for the operations of state government. This, as Representative Cloutier educated me and Bruce, is the state budget. And so we felt like that was a pretty important thing, although what goes in that budget and how it reflects our values is obviously a very important statement. So Bruce and Representative Cloutier, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but any more detail. The next one was LD 763, which is an act to ensure the availability of community integration services. That's in the Health and Human Services Subcommittee. Representative Cloutier, I know this was one of the bills that you evaluated. Could you provide any detail?
So this, hold on one second. I thought I had opened up my, what number is this one again? I'm sorry.
It is LD 763.
Okay. So this is, Rachel, this is your bill, correct? I think this is Representative Talbot Ross's bill. And it more fairly compensates those providing adult case management services who may currently be operating at a loss with the current reimbursement rates. And so it really, right now, services are really being limited, I think, to folks because those reimbursement rates are resulting in a loss of providers. So it also results in people receiving more services and having to wait long periods of time to receive those services. especially those dealing with acute symptoms. So we really felt like this was an important one to sort of help with those with mental health systems, substance use disorders, and homelessness, and that would help prevent folks from entering the criminal justice system based upon preventive services as opposed to the criminal justice system. And because we know that there's a disproportionate number of marginalized populations who are incarcerated for issues related to mental health and substance use disorder, that this would be effective in helping to alleviate some of those inequities.
Thank you, Representative Cloutier.
I apologize. Sorry, may I ask which, I missed what the number was for that bill? Sorry.
It's okay, 763.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry about that.
That's okay. The next bill was LD 954, which is an act to rescind an act to implement the Maine Indian Claims Settlement. And this was one of those bills where one question we have, Madam Chair, and others and other commission members is some of these bills relate to other bills in ways that some of our committee, at least speaking for me and maybe Bruce, may not understand the full implications of those. But from what we understood of this bill is really required for other bills that would further forward tribal sovereignty. And so we felt like it was an important one that we wanted to raise up as important for, for tribal sovereignty and tribal representation. Bruce and others, I don't know if you have any comments on that, but we felt like it was very much in the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish. The next bill was also one that I reviewed, LD 1221, which is an act to allow deductions for prison sentences for rehabilitative activities. And I think I'll just speak briefly, Bruce, and then I'd love to share your perspective. But based on my reading of it and the testimony and doing some search on various data and research around this one did also feel like a real no-brainer in terms of the populations that tend to be most affected with incarceration. So Bruce, do you want to share any more?
Sure, simply that, from personal experience, like I stated at the beginning, there's a lot of programs, and the programs do a decent job of just keeping people semi-diverted. However, a lot of them don't result in a whole lot of, anything tangible. So I think the motivations there would really improve the outcomes and also create better rhythms, because a lot of the stuff doesn't necessarily result in a certificate or something that you can take out of the workforce. So any initiatives that we can, incentives that we can create, I think are going to go a long way in keeping people out.
Thanks, Bruce. And I found it interesting just reading the testimony, not being super familiar with these issues, but the range of testimony, and that this was a bill that actually originated from incarcerated individuals, I found very powerful, and support ranging from the Maine Civil Liberties Union up to the director or the commissioner of corrections. So it's pretty wide support. So I'm going to keep us moving. LD 1611, 1611, an act to support universal health care. We felt like, although the bill itself doesn't really address specific racial disparities, we felt like it, if there were truly universal access to health care, that it would tremendously benefit Maine racial, indigenous, and tribal populations.
Absolutely. Personally, I work in a very congested area of Lewiston, and I know that due to the high impact of COVID, there has a lot to do with multiple things. But if you can at least get people seeing a regular provider and having a relationship with the healthcare system in a way that a lot of people just don't, hopefully that creates incentive to address some of the issues that we're seeing come up right now with the current epidemic.
Yeah. Thanks, Bruce. The next one was LD 1650, an act to strengthen consumer protections in healthcare. I'd say I welcome my subcommittee colleagues to weigh in, but we felt like this was very similar reasons to the universal health care one. So, there's more to say on that. The next one, so the last one, I think that where we had both strong support and an evaluation for assessment form 4 was LD 2139, an act to increase government accountability. And Representative Cloutier, I think I'd add, if you wouldn't mind weighing in on this one, because I think this was one that you reviewed.
Sure. So this is Representative Warren's bill, and this is related to government tracking and whether or not law enforcement needs. It basically says that law enforcement neither needs to confirm or deny the existence or non-existence of facial recognition technology or methods to track cell phones and those kinds of things. So basic, threats to democracy when we can't sort of control or debate or assess what we don't know is being collected. There have been situations in New York City recently where this was used to avoid replying to FOA requests because there was surveillance being done on Muslim neighborhoods and political protesters. So I think that we all kind of thought that this was a pretty important one to the goals that we're trying to reach with this group. I don't believe there's any fiscal note, so very low cost, and very low in terms of human resources.
What number again? I'm sorry, what number was that, Bill?
That was 2139.
May I address 1611 briefly also, as the committee chair for the committee who heard that bill? This is Denise Tepler, and I just want to let you all know that the amendment to that bill was a committee that was supposed to meet this summer to keep analyzing approaches to universal health care. And given the timeline that we're currently on as a legislature, that is probably going to remain in committee. It's kind of a moot bill at this point.
That's really good input. I think, one thing that we were trying to do with our committee was really highlight issues as much as bills. The bills are very important, but really kind of utilizing this as a way to, bring attention to things that we thought would create greater equity. So it maybe us pushing this forward is somewhat symbolic, and we're happy to do that. So, but thank you.
And I'm happy to have you do that. It's just want to give you the reality check with it.
Please do that. Anybody who's working on any of these bills, please chime in with that.
Okay, so thanks. Now I'm going to just go through a few more bills for which our committee members weren't able to get us the full assessment forms on, but that came up in our call last week and in discussions. But the first of which, and then make sure we're not missing any from our remaining committee members that haven't been able to weigh in. But the next one was LD 647, which was in the IDEA committee, and it's an act to attract, educate, and retain new state residents to strengthen the workforce. And I believe this is actually Representative Cloutier's bill, and she can speak to it more knowledgeably than I can, but we did feel like this had explicit racial equity component and really was aligned, across the board in terms of the various factors that we were assessing. Representative Cloutier, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that is a little bit misleading about this bill is the title. So when it says new Maine state residents, it's directed explicitly to immigrants and refugee communities. And it expands upon adult language access and on-the-job training for those folks who come to the United States and who need English language skills and who need English language skills in relation to the jobs that they're performing. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's sort of the short answer.
That does have a modest fiscal note, is that correct?
Yeah, so it has half the fiscal note it had because now we're halfway through the biennium, and it is on the appropriations table. I think it's about $1 million.
So the next one going through this list was LD 680, which is an act to clarify the intent of the Federal Maine Indian Claims Settlement Act of 1980 to ensure the federal principle of inherent tribal sovereignty. Again, this wasn't formally evaluated using the assessment form, but it was one that in our discussion, we felt like this the principle and substance of tribal sovereignty was very important for what we were trying to accomplish. I welcome my committee members and the comments that you have on that.
You know, I think, you know, this is one where we could use a little bit more clarity around, you know, from the actual authors of the bill. But once again, we're looking at the sorts of issues that we want to be raising using this commission. And we felt that that was well situated in terms of the mission of what we're trying to accomplish here.
So I guess that was the last one. The only other one that I'll highlight, you know, that we didn't really, there are a couple bills related to voting rights. And again, those bills weren't evaluated, but we did feel like those were important. In particular, there was one LD 2067, which is an act to authorize the automatic continuation of absentee voter status until the termination of that status. And again, where we needed a little more information, but I think our feeling was like any way to encourage and support the act of voting was a very important issue from a racial equity perspective.
Also, did we already cover 431?
No, we did not.
Okay, so
yeah, that would be the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, 431 is right in that vein, an act to make Election Day a state holiday. I know a lot of the individuals that I work with work long hours. They, you know, they are not able to make it to the polls. And they tend to be people who are doing the frontline kind of work. A lot of individuals do not have vehicles. So for them, it is not as simple as just driving to a polling station. You know, they actually have to like coordinate their day around it. So for us, we felt that that was, you know, because of the barriers that exist to, you know, disproportionately to people of color, doing anything we can to get them into the voting booth was vital.
So Katie, I don't know how we're doing on time. Have we used up all our time? Or?
Katie?
You have 3.5 minutes left.
Okay. So with that, I know, again, I hope our jumping around hasn't been too confusing to people, but I did want to just make sure any of our subcommittee members who didn't have a chance because of other obligations to weigh in on any of the bills on this list.
For 470, we didn't cover 470 yet either, did we?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So this one was a little bit interesting, and it's one that Kristen actually brought to our attention. It was one around an act to provide traffic safety education in schools. This isn't solely around drivers ed. In fact, it sounds based on Kristen's account that it's actually much more around respecting the laws of the street and whatnot. And I know in Lewiston we had, you know, a tragedy where a young child ran into the street, and so making sure that people are understanding those impacts and the right of way. And so there can be cultural barriers to understanding those things. So making sure that the kids are getting the information at a young age, which may or may not be available through their families traditionally. Kristen, is there anything else you wanted to add on that one?
I mean, I would just say that, you know, most of our lower income downtown neighborhood in Lewiston, we have a lot of diversity there. And so I think that the students in those districts are the ones who are walking and riding their bikes to school. They're not being bused. And so I think that from a safety perspective, this one is pretty important to those populations.
Yeah, thank you. Good catch, Bruce. Thank you.
The big issue that we raised in the committee, however, was how this education is delivered. And that was, I think, the major hangup.
There was one other bill that I don't see on this list, and it was the one relating to the prosecutorial district in, I think it was Washington County, which again is a bill that sort of by the title, you wouldn't sort of understand necessarily what that meant, and you wouldn't either from the bill text, but if you read the testimony, one of the tribal communities felt that that was really important to their sovereignty. And so I don't know that it rose to the level of some of these other ones that we've talked about, but I do think it's something we want to take into consideration.
Yeah, that was LD 1967 for reference for people.
Hi, this is Susan. May I speak? Okay. I guess I'm a little confused. I didn't attend the meeting last Wednesday because Criminal Justice and Public Safety had a meeting. But Keith, I don't know when I have 3 bills. Did you want me to report those or what?
Yes, if you could do that, that would be great.
Okay. I'll do it by numerical order. 414, let me find it also. That's an act to provide intensive case managers to counties that do not have county jails or regional jails. This is a very good one. If anyone doesn't know, I will tell you, I worked for the Department of Corrections as a caseworker inside the prison for 43 years. So I know what good case management is. This really would divert people from either staying in jail or being incarcerated in the state prison. Intensive case managers are people who can evaluate quickly a mental health crisis. And they also do intervention with treatment plans. If someone is diverted from the jail and doesn't go to the state prison or what have you, they also monitor the individual's compliance with the treatment plan. And this really is geared for mental health. Currently in the state, there are 15 ICMs, intensive case managers. The bill did not ask for a number, but the amendment asked for 4. And it was ought to pass as amended 4. And here's where we all gulp. Good luck on that one. The fiscal note is $370,000 each fiscal year. I'm going to take a moment because I'm going to read something the sheriff wrote in his testimony. In Waldo County, from 2016 to 2018, they did 3,200 intakes, but then they even broke that down. Of those 3,200 intakes, 788 were the same people who came 2 or 3 times in the jail. That's 73%, the same people. Of those 788 people in 2-year period, 309 had a substance use disorder, 19 mental health, 424 of them had co-occurring disorders. I applaud the Waldo County Sheriff to do that kind of data to really let people know, frequent flyers, they keep coming back. They come back for a reason. They have a problem that should be addressed and could be addressed at that juncture. So the only thing that's holding it up right now is the fiscal note. If anyone has any questions. 1144 is an act to authorize the tribal gaming. I just got off the phone this morning with the chair, Senate Chair Louis Lucchini. I was familiar with this bill, but I wanted to make sure. It landed, because it has to do with gambling and gaming, it lands in Legal Affairs and Veterans Committee. They're holding it up primarily because the judiciary has got that large tribal bill that they're working on. And especially gaming, there is such a thing as an Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, federal. So that's why it's held up. So there'll be some, there's a different vehicle where that might pass. So did I make myself understood on that? Okay, thank you. The last one is 1520. This is a bill from Senator Nate Libby, an act to create jobs, sustain jobs through the development of cooperatives and employee-owned businesses. This is a very good bill. It basically supports it by asking the taxation committee to exclude main income tax, the amount gained when the owner transfers ownership, that they be able to deduct about $750,000. That's $750,000. That's just to promote that. It also includes that the Department of Economic and Community Development would assist employee-owned businesses in developing education for the workers. You can well imagine, I think the best one I read had to do with that organization Rise Up, which is a tenement or an apartment building in, I believe, downtown Lewiston. That's where the residents cooperatively own and manage that building. And once they leave, they'll be able to withdraw the money that is due them because they've invested in their own housing. And I really think that's a really good bill. I think that was a high keep on subcommittee 2. I spoke with the sponsor, Senator Libby. It's been carried over since March. Right now, it's on the appropriations table, and it has a fiscal note of $177,000. So that's it. All set?
Thank you, Senator Dishenbaugh. And I just want to thank our committee. Katie, I know we have to move on, so, but appreciate everyone's input on these.
Thank you very much, Subcommittee 2. I just want to remind folks that you can actively, start scoring as these bills are being discussed. But you will have all the rest of this week and the weekend to go back and do some more investigation around the bills. Feel free to reach out to your subcommittee chairs or staff, myself included, if you'd like. If you have any further questions about the scoring. So I just want to remind you that you can do that now, and then you will have through the weekend to complete this process. I would like to turn it over. Thank you, Subcommittee 2, for all your work. I'd like to turn it over to Subcommittee 3, which is the co-chairs are Joby and Chief Clarissa Sabatis. And if you can introduce yourselves and your subcommittee members before talking about your bills, that would be great. We have about 20 minutes left, just to give you a time check. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Talbot Ross. I'm Joby Thoyolo. I'm the co-chair of Subcommittee 3. I wonder if my co-chair is on the call.
I am, and I want this is Chief Sabatis, and I have to apologize because I've been very absent from this process at this point. So, but I'm here.
I'm glad you can join us. At least one member, Representative Carney, is on Subcommittee 3. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, it's afternoon now. Good afternoon. I'm Ann Carney. I represent House District 30, which is Cape Elizabeth. I'm happy to be here today, and thanks to the committee for all the great work everybody did.
Any other members of Subcommittee 3?
I'm on the phone. This is Ben Collings in Portland.
Great. So I will, well, anyone else that I might have missed? All right, so I'll try to go quickly. Overall, our subcommittee had 16 bills on our keep list after we met yesterday. We decided to spend our time today to just share some concerns and comments and some potential amendments, which I think are also kind of concerns that we flagged for specific bills, because we didn't think we would have the time to go through every bill in detail. And so I'll only go through those few specific bills and actually probably even a shorter subset of them. So I hope there will be time for anyone on the call, including members of Subcommittee 3, to weigh in with things I might have missed and any questions you might have about any of the bills on our list. And I'm happy to hear that you have the opportunity to continue to weigh in over the next few days. And I encourage any of you to reach out to any of the members of Subcommittee 3 if you have any questions about any of the bills, especially the ones we don't discuss today. So with that, I will start with LD 30, which is an act to improve healthcare data analysis. This bill was a concept draft. I think there are probably members of HCIFS that know a lot more about the status of the bill, but I will just sum up by saying that I think the intention is for it to designate the Maine Health Data Organization as the holder of Maine's healthcare data, and to give it the oversight responsibility for reporting of public health activities and a few other things. And again, I invite anyone who knows more to fill us in. But I'm going to skip to our discussion about this bill. We did raise some concerns. Our overall decision, however, was to keep this on the list for now because of the potential and importance of increasing access to data around healthcare. The concern that I think was already pointed out by Representative Tepler in one of our first meetings together as a full committee is that the bill doesn't specify looking at data, racial disparities, looking at data based on race, based on tribal status. And so like with so many of the bills on our list, and I'm sure all of your lists, it's how the bill is implemented is what would be key in order to have an impact on racial disparities. And so we really wanted to flag that concern. Let's see. But overall, we thought, again, keeping it on the list because the organization, the Maine Health Data Organization, doesn't have the capacity to properly collect the data that's needed. And so this bill could help build their capacity.
I think there's an existing amendment to this bill, Joby, that's more specific, but it does not include collecting data from community on the disparate issues having to do with communities of color. It's a technical, basically a very technical bill. So that's something we have to talk about in the future in terms of MHDO.
Okay.
And this is Chief Sabatis too, and I added a comment, but it was late. But regarding data collection with small populations as well, we've run into instances where the state does try to collect some data on tribal members, but they don't have, I mean, they don't even know if they're really reflecting the tribes that live here in Maine or if people really are tribal members, but their data is definitely not accurate compared to data collection that we do within the tribes. So then they report that to the federal government and it ends up showing that we don't have, or showing lower numbers. So I think that should be on people's radar when they're doing data collection with smaller minority populations, not creating a bigger barrier or more issues because they're not doing it accurately or collecting accurately.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to try to sum up your comment, but you did it much better than I could. Any other comments on LD 30 before we move on, or questions? All right, so the next bill is LD 149. Let me just pull it up real quickly. So this bill, it's an act to authorize a general fund bond issue to provide student debt forgiveness to support workforce attraction and retention. It calls for a $250 million general fund bond to help pay for people's student loans if they agree to live and work in Maine for 5 years, and to reimburse employers that make student loan payments on behalf of their employees who agree to live and work in Maine for 5 years. I flagged this one for bringing up today because we noted that that there's strong support for the potential in the areas of debt and wealth and income. People of color across the country disproportionately have to take out more loans to get higher education. They disproportionately have to take out higher interest loans because of decades of inability of having access to fair and affordable credit. And so we saw this as having a potentially very beneficial impact economically for families and young people who are leaving higher education. Similar to what I mentioned earlier, the fact that it's not targeted towards communities of color in any way gave us a little bit of pause, a little bit of concern. And so one thing we thought, if an amendment were possible for there to be some sort of targeting in the implementation, and possibly a...
He called me yesterday and asked me if I wanted to attend. And I said yes.
Representative Guttine, you're not on mute.
Be in the loop than out of the loop.
The last thing I'll just say about this bill is we thought maybe an amendment calling for a report back to the committee about who is benefiting from the program could help tell us if it's having a desired impact on racial disparities. Anything else on this bill or any questions?
I just want to add, this is Susan. I remember discussion. It's Nate Libby's bill. It's a good bill, but everybody coughed in the 10-year period, the bond, it's a bond. It's over $300 million, but it's that was the part, but it's a bond question. It'll come back next session.
Great. I'm going to move us on to the next bill that I flagged. And this is the bill that actually had the most discussion. It was kind of the most controversial within our subcommittee. And this is LD 420, which, so this is an act to amend Maine exclusion amount in the estate tax. The bill returns the exclusion amount on estates to $2 million, which from 5.6 million. And the discussion around this, try to summarize it. So there was both significant support and as well as significant concerns. In the end, we made the decision that despite the significant concerns with both the policy and the politics around this issue, we were all willing to keep it on the list as long as I clearly shared these concerns. And so I'll quickly run through the list of concerns as I have them for my notes. So it would not be a good way to approach racial disparities in the current climate. It's a very polarizing issue. Not good for the legislature to engage in a debate on this right now during the special session. It would be too hurried to try to do it during the special session. One person thought it would be better to focus on rolling back the income tax cuts. People feel they've paid taxes on the income that make up their estate. If you're taxing income, you're newly taxing it for the first time, so that's more fair. Small businesses could be impacted or would be impacted by this bill, and therefore it may have the opposite effect of what's intended. And then there's a little confusion about the status of the current amendment, and I know Representative Collins is the sponsor, and maybe he could clear that up. But before you do that, I wanted to get into the points in favor about this. Let's see. So in favor, it was brought up that wealth is more concentrated than income. So this is related to the racial wealth gap. And wealth is concentrated in white communities. People of color have less access to intergenerational transfers of wealth. History of the bill was about white people. Franklin Roosevelt looked to where wealth was in the country during the New Deal. It could now similarly be used to fund social programs. And then the points were made that where this wealth came from, land was stolen from the tribes, slaves were used to build wealth. This was passed down generation to generation. While this bill may not be a silver bullet, it brings up a really important discussion. 60% of the racial wealth gap can be attributed to intergenerational transfers of wealth, according to Thomas Piketty. The wealth gap increases sharply with age. White Americans have much more wealth at the end of their lives to pass on to the next generation than communities of color. So those are the notes I have on this. Again, this is the one we discussed the most. I don't know if anyone has anything to add. Representative Collins, maybe you as the bill sponsor.
I don't know if people can hear me. I'm on the phone.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I would answer any questions. I don't know if people want to have we discussed it at length. I don't know if there's any questions. I'd be happy to expand on what you said, which you summarized very succinctly.
So Joby, I'm just going to remind you, you've got probably about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Okay. So I will just remind everyone to please reach out to subcommittee members with any questions you have about these bills as I move on. Next, I have flagged LD 1392, an act to establish a formal tribal consultation process with the state. And all I was going to say about this, unless Representative Collins, you have an update, is that there's a work session scheduled for this bill on Thursday. And so I think that in addition to reaching out to Representative Newell, we were going to kind of reserve our judgment until we learn more. Representative Collins, do you happen to know more at this point?
Well, I mean, I gave kind of a quick review of it to our subcommittee yesterday, and I did connect with Representative Newell briefly through messages today, and she pretty much concurred, and as we suspected, would like support. And this consultation, I think another subcommittee mentioned something about consultation earlier, but this was created in the Obama administration. It was highly successful, and obviously, if we're talking about inequities, systemic racism and whatnot, I mean, you need to have tribal leaders and members at the table to discuss policies that affect their community's health, socioeconomics, and so forth. So it worked very successfully at the federal level, and I believe it should be occurring here in Maine to some extent. And so I think we were supportive of it, and Representative Newell, as we suspected, is happy to have that support. So,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This is Kenneth Lewis. I'm just wondering, with the limited time, if there is a particular bill, there's one here that I'm interested in, whether or not the subcommittee is going to talk to. That's 1421. I know it's a little bit further down on the list, but just wasn't sure I didn't want to interrupt their process, but I didn't know how far we're going to get. So just a question.
Sure.
Thank you.
I could say I actually hadn't flagged it for discussion because there were no concerns. I think everyone felt pretty strongly that it should go through. So there was very little discussion about it within our group. I did the assessment on that, and I did a lot of work on it and research. I'm happy to share that. I feel personally very strongly about that bill going through and being part of our recommendations.
If there, Reverend Lewis, do you have any immediate questions about the assessment? And if so, we do have about
I'm sorry. The process of listening to kind of I guess the ones that have more controversy versus the advocacy for the ones that rose to the level, I'm just a little not sure what I'm hearing and what's being supported, what's rising to the top. I know we have another process that we're going to go through, and that was one particular LD on the list that I had great interest in. So I just wanted to raise that to get a sense from the subcommittee what their thinking was on the bail code reform piece.
Yeah, I apologize. Given the tight time frame, we just focused on the ones that weren't sort of obvious to us to move forward.
Yeah, I'm just gonna thank you, Joby. Thank you, Reverend Lewis, for the question. It looks like time is going to not allow for a fuller conversation on it, but certainly folks can get in touch with Joby or Chief Sabatis to talk more about 1421. I believe Senator Bellows has her hand raised. Had a quick question.
Thank
Senator
you.
Bellows?
Yes, just to expand on what Reverend Lewis said, I think it would be helpful, and maybe Subcommittee 3 could email it to the group, just for me to know what are the bills that were so obvious in your perspective that would have a important impact in dismantling racial disparities that we should really pay close attention to. So if maybe just letting us know, like, really take a look at these, because I love it. Each group has done some amazing work, but the approach of Subcommittee 2 seemed to be look at these bills, and Subcommittee 3 kind of reversed it and said, don't, think about these bills because these bills might be problematic. So I'm similarly having just a mind shift.
So co-chairs for Subcommittee 3, is that possible to send within the next 24 hours or so as people are trying to do their rankings? Just your top tier bills for the full committee to consider?
Yes, we'll need to do a quick poll, but I think we can do that over email.
Okay. I don't want you to, well, 48 hours soon. I just don't want folks to miss the opportunity to give the bills that you really want to move forward their full consideration.
Sure.
And I'll just ask the Subcommittee 3 chairs if they will finish with their report.
I guess the last bill, and this is one that those of us who are able to meet did feel strongly about, is LD 1529, an act concerning non-disclosure agreements in employment. There was some disagreement in that the assessment did not strongly promote this bill. However, those of us who met felt strongly that this bill, it addresses discrimination in employment. It increases protections for employees for any type of discrimination, including we feel based on race. And so we thought that, again, those of us who were able to discuss it really felt strongly about this bill. And it also made us want to note that it's one of the only bills on our list that's focused on employees and employment. And that's the last bill I was going to highlight.
Thank you. Thank you, Joby and Chief Sabatis, for your work, and all of the committee members in Subcommittee 3 for that report. We are at time. We've got about a minute to conclude this meeting. Are there any questions, comments that anyone would like to make before we adjourn today?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
So for all the bills that we did not get to, should we go through those? And I think that's already been said with Commission 3, but the first two, I mean, subcommittee, but the first two, should we go back through and
Please, yeah. The goal is that you'll send in your ranking on that priority setting tool that was sent. We can send it again easily. That you will rank those bills that each subcommittee brought forward for the permanent commission to consider in the next phase of this process.
and that I guess and that includes the gaps where we like skipped around and the ones that weren't talked about. We should look into and rank as well.
Thank you, Isaiah. At this point, each subcommittee really needs to identify their top tier bills that they want to keep in this process. So if that hasn't been communicated to the full committee, then you need to do that very quickly, because the full committee needs to evaluate just the bills that your committee has deemed necessary to keep. So if that hasn't been populated yet, and I'll check in with Megan and Reggie, but if your subcommittee's list of tier 1 bills, the bills you want to keep, have not made it to the full committee's spreadsheet, that needs to be done fairly quickly. And I can talk to you more.
Talbot Ross, could I hop in just to clarify a little bit?
Sure.
So I think we are working to get some updated information from the committees that haven't participated yet, as well as some new information from those groups that went today, including the updated information from Joey, and we'll get that in a new Excel document out to everyone. There was an error on subcommittee 6. The bills listed under their tab are actually the bills for subcommittee 5. So we'll get a whole new list out to everyone just to reflect that change. But I think to Isaiah's question, Isaiah, for those bills that the subcommittees didn't specifically talk about, it would be good for you to do some of your own research or reach out to the subcommittee members or co-chairs to ask specifically about those bills that you still might have questions about, to help you have a better understanding of those, because we do want everyone to do the priority setting for all the bills that are on that Excel document.
Thank you.
So seeing no other questions, I just want to again reiterate the deep appreciation to each and every one of you for the time that you put into this process, your commitment to attend meetings and to do the rankings, and to get through a fairly complicated process of filtering and ranking over 460 bills before the 129th. I do want to end this meeting in lasting memory and honor and respect for the life of Esther Haynes. We will reconvene on Monday at 11:30, and you'll get that Zoom information. You should already have it, but we'll send it back out. So in lasting memory of Mrs. Haynes, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for your time in this process.
Thank you, Representative Talbot Ross. I very much appreciate your statement for the member of the Green Memorial Church, the woman who spent almost 76 years in the city of Portland. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Reverend Lewis. And we are adjourned. Bye-bye.